there's a lot to know about this movie.
Is there?
Yeah. I mean, I can pull Mercy Graves out of my back pocket, but
who's that?
Lex's assistant.
Oh.
She's like a character. I don't like what they did to her. I think she's on Amazon in like the comics. She's his bodyguard. I really don't think Zack Snyder's sexist, but there's a handful of things that I'm like, because there's one in this that pisses me off, and now I can't remember what it was. I didn't write it down. It's up there with the tinkle, though.
Yeah.
What if I need to tinkle?
There's a bucket in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, why is this degrading for no reason?
Not good.
I was watching a video. I'm like,
what is the intro for this episode?
I was watching a video about like good things about it, and I didn't disagree with stuff, and so I'm coming to this with a very internally conflicted energy.
Okay.
So
I'm not as conflicted.
I know. Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show, your twice weekly pop culture podcast where we talk about movies, TV, music, and more. And as always, this is the spoiler show, so you have been warned. On today's episode, we're going to continue our descent into the DCEU with BVS, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Movie 2.
The red capes are coming.
We're already dawning on a new era.
Yeah. I've done a couple of things. I have my Wonder Woman shirt again. I thought the pearl necklace would look stupid, so I've got pearl earrings, though. A little nod to Martha Wayne. And black nails, because this is dark and serious. Is that a good opening point?
Sure. So to catch everybody up, I don't know if you've watched Man of Steel.
Yeah.
We are not huge DCEU fans. However, maybe just because it's us, we think we do have things to say about it. We're not. We are actually relatively big. I'm saying that again. We are relative Zack Snyder fans.
Yes. Yeah.
We like multiple properties and hope to like ones in the future.
This is not it.
No. For reasons we'll discuss.
Yeah, I even prefer Man of Steel to this.
Yeah.
As a general
thing. So we're just going to have a conversation. We're just going to get into it and kind of discuss what we like and what we don't. And unfortunately, there will be comparisons to Marvel.
Yeah.
Not so much in this versus that, but just for us, we feel like it's unavoidable.
Yeah. They're trying so hard to be equal, and then they're just biffing it at every turn.
Sure, but also my point in doing this is not to prove that Marvel's better, that Marvel's good and DC sucks.
Sure,
it's just hard not to compare when there's such a similar thing happening concurrently. So that's more what I'm like, where I'm sort of like, well, if something didn't work here and I feel like it worked here, how do I not
say it?
Yeah, so
I agree.
Where do you want to start with this?
Well, I guess we could lay out the plot a little bit, because Man of Steel is absolutely an origin story, but this is like 18 months after. The majority of this movie takes place 18 months after Man of Steel, and it's like the repercussions of the literal full destruction of Metropolis. And so it's like, on the one hand, I think it could have been really interesting, because really none of these superhero movies address that very much. Even MCU doesn't do that. It wasn't until we had the Netflix Marvel shows that they were like, there were people that were like, I lost everything.
Well, we start 2 in phase 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So we're going to come right out of the gate with the comparisons. But
that was almost, it's halfway a positive for DC.
And that opening sequence is really, really fascinating, especially positing the whole thing from Bruce's perspective, because you can't tell what's happening. You can't tell who the good guy is. You can't tell who the bad. They look like bullies fighting on a playground.
Yeah.
And there's sort of just really chilling imagery for people, anyone, I'm sure, but speaking from our own perspective, we came of age, we're millennials, we came of age at the millennium, and we sat in our high school and watched 9/11 happen.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to be far enough removed from that we can sort of get into some of that without feeling exploitative. And there's a very, very gorgeous shot of people running away and like the wall of debris and Bruce running straight to it.
Yeah.
And we like Ben Affleck, period. You were going to go on a...
I love Ben Affleck.
Okay, you're going to go.
I have loved Ben Affleck a really long time. I know he's gone through some waves where he's been kind of a sketchy person, a little bit of a dick and stuff. And like, you know, I think a lot of that is growing. I think a lot of it is like who helped him become a famous person. There are issues there.
We don't talk about the Goose Goblin.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into that. Sure. I've always loved Ben Affleck. I've always thought he was a talented actor. I think he's really smart. I think he's a good writer. And I think even when he's doing something kind of stupid, I think there's still an element of like reality to it. I think he's always doing what he needs to do in the things he's doing.
Because I think he knows what movie he's in.
He absolutely knows what movies he's in. And I'm going to say this right now, and it is going to be my like siren call for the rest of the DC. Ben Affleck as Batman is not the issue. It was never the issue. He is an excellent Bruce. He's a great Batman. Ben Affleck is not the issue with the DCEU, in my opinion. I think he's actually great across the board. I think he's big enough. He's tall enough. He put on a lot of muscle. He's got the jawline. He's got the face. He's got a butt chin. It's Ben Affleck's Batman for me. I love it.
This is a story about two sentient butt chins.
Yeah, right.
Two jawbones fighting. That's ultimately. I do want to go back to the story because I've seen this 3 times, maybe potentially 4. I've seen like bits and pieces of it, and I'm still not entirely sure what happens. And it's not a complicated story, but I'm just sort of like, why are we in Fallujah? Like, why are we, or wherever it is?
So I think that Lois was just doing a story. Just like a regular, I don't think that was related to anything except for like it becomes related later. But she was there just like covering a thing. And then we have like 4 minutes of Jimmy Olsen. And then
famous CIA operative Jimmy Olsen.
And then he is murdered by terrorists. And it's just like, cool, I guess.
This was ultimately my biggest issue with this movie specifically and the Snyderverse as a whole is what we are dealing with is it feels objectively too silly for how serious they're taking it.
Okay.
And it puts us, the audience, at a crossroads because it's instructing us to be cynical and realistic with this stuff.
Sure.
But then expects us to hand wave or lampshade the typical comic book conventions and tropes and stuff. And so there was a point where I was watching this where I was like, who is this for? Because nothing happens in this movie that you don't know going in.
Sure.
We know Lex Luthor is bald and bad.
Yeah.
We know Wonder Woman's a badass and gonna show up. We know that Superman is allergic to kryptonite. We know that that's what that is. We know every single thing going in here, but they're spoon feeding it to us like it's new information. And I would say, well, that's fine. It's an origin story if the thing weren't rated R.
But
it's also so clearly not for a new generation of fans.
It's also not an origin story because it's not even a Batman origin story.
Which I would say that mercifully they spared us a Batman origin story, except that they don't.
Well, we still get the fucking...
Which at this point, no, I know how you feel about that. But at this point, it's such a choice that I'm going to be mad if we don't have it.
I mean, fine. fine.
I want to see the take.
I when they announced the
every movie, Batman 5, I want it to open with.
Well, when they released when they started announcing the stuff for the Robert Pattinson Batman, and I was like, so help me God, if there is one loose pearl in this movie, I am going to scream.
I'll be livid if they don't do it. It's like a religious ceremony. It's I feel like Leslie Knope in the scene where she's listening to her mom tell the lifeguard story, and it's like, oh, and it's like, I know the story, but but
the drama.
Because that's a huge plot point in the first part of this movie is what is the kryptonite? I'm like,
yeah, I know it's a green stone that came from the ship. What?
And
Doy.
I mean, you have to consider our perspective, we're, a straight woman and a gay man watching this. And so I'm sure that there are plenty of people, to generalize straight dudes watching this that are just loving going through the motions.
Sure.
Believe me, I've watched the Snow White and the Huntsman movies multiple times. I have no problem seeing shit I like going through the motions.
But I don't like this shit enough is my problem.
And it's culturally, it's considered to be broader than it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of a niche thing that because of the patriarchy, we all have to suffer through. Do you know what I mean? It's just
I should have really worn my toxic masculinity ruins the party again t-shirt.
Well, and I mean, so this does bring us to Wonder Woman. And I think one of the reasons why it was so good, it was so exciting, is because we didn't know. We hoped there was an expectation for Wonder Woman.
Well, because we knew that, Diana was good, because she's in the trailers, but we didn't know that
we didn't know what Gall's performance was going to be. And there was controversy, or there was scuttlebutt when she was cast, from myself included, that when I saw that picture of her, I thought that bitch is too skinny.
Yeah.
She is too tall and too skinny. This is not Wonder Woman.
Tall is not an issue.
Tall is not, but she's slender.
Sure.
It's like, I
she's
wanted.
Very long.
Yeah. And I remember saying that, I was just anticipating a Williams sister, and I know that's not, that's probably not what you're going to get from Hollywood, but I just didn't know that I believed she was going to be able to pull it off. And when she did it so well, and also because a lot of people kind of criticize that, I think she has 9.5 minutes of actual screen time in this slog. I think that works in her credit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying less is more, because there are 2 full Wonder Woman movies with varying results.
Yeah.
But
she does get all the best lines, though, in those 9.5 minutes. So it's also...
Okay, so let's talk about her and Ben Affleck's chemistry and stuff. And
amazing. Flames. Fire.
The line where he says, I've known plenty of women like you.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think you've ever known a woman like me.
That's very standard flirtatious banter, but why it works so well is because it's both true.
Yeah.
That's not Bruce peacocking. It seems like he is. But when you start considering, Selena Kyle, Pamela Eiley, Harley Quinn, when you start considering...
We don't know how deep into the Batman mythology
and he seems pretty grizzled.
Yeah. Well, that is one of the things that I actually like so much about Ben Affleck's performances, because we only really got it in The Dark Knight Rises, which I think is the weakest of the Nolan trilogy, where, Bruce was all beat up and he couldn't really move and his back was broken and all this stuff. I like over the hill Batman. I think that's a very fun take. And I mean, Ben Affleck's almost 50 if he's not already. And I just that's a good place for Ben Affleck's Batman to be. And so it's he's still able to do it and he's not injured too far, but it's such a cool thing to do.
It also allows me to sort of justify going to this party again.
Yeah.
It's at least this is different. At least this is a take on it. Because especially in the 2000s into the 2010s, we were in a real spot of having to do the same thing over and over and over and over again every 8 years.
The Gotham Library Party again.
But I'm talking about we had a Spider-Man reboot. We had to reboot everything that even just I think that stuff is where the movie works. And it's one of the few places where the movie uses our existing understanding of the world in its favor.
It should
because
do
it
that
then
more.
spends the rest of the movie explaining things to us that we're like, I fucking know.
And I think you mentioned it when we were watching last night, but it's like, for whatever reason, it's because even the Nolan trilogy didn't do this as bad, in my opinion. But you're right. It's like, it's all of these weird, fantastical things, like LexCorp is insane, and like all of this stuff is crazy, and Wonder Woman is an Amazon, but they're couching it in this real world stuff. Soledad O'Brien is herself in this movie. Anderson Cooper is himself in this movie.
15.
Nancy Grace is herself in this movie. It's fucking weird. They're having
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
They're having a whole Charlie Rose is in this movie.
And there's something so uncanny about forcing Anderson Cooper, and he pulls it off with a straight face, but to be like, we've lost the Metropolis feed.
We just lost connection with Metropolis 8 News. Now, it's not clear what just happened.
Where are we?
Yeah.
Is Metropolis a city in the United States?
So I was reading some of the trivia.
I hate it.
No, I mean, it is terrible.
Thanks, I hate it.
It's sort of the way that it's set up in this movie is that it's sort of like Metropolis is New York City and Gotham is Jersey, because they're like across a river from each other.
That's stupid.
So that's like geographically, that's what they're most similar to.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I always thought Metropolis was Chicago, and I thought
they just are, but they are like literally like zipping back and forth. That's too far. Chicago's too far. Yeah. I know. I'm on your team
because the Nolan. Okay, so the Nolan, it is realistic. It is grounded in reality, and it's like allusions to the comic book part.
Yeah,
where it's like,
but it's grounded in a reality. It's not grounded in our reality. Sure, our real reality.
But there's like magic in these movies, and that's where it's too frustrating to put Neil deGrasse Tyson in something where, again, like I said, and I mean, well, no, Aquaman's in this movie. Mm-hmm. There's like mermaids in the sea, and it just doesn't work for me. There on a fundamental level, I'm just sort of sneering at it.
Yeah,
where
there's not. So I don't really know how they do it, but I'm gonna make another comparison. But somehow the MCU marries the magic and the science a lot more smoothly than this, because it's
they haven't. The magic has been so on the periphery.
Well, but I mean, like Thor, you know what I mean? Like, there are magic people in the MCU, and they've sort of married that in with the people who are science experiments in a way that hasn't really been. But this is so. But also, the science of the MCU
isn't so gritty. The way, it's very. Science and magic are but one and the same. Yeah. And I mean, we just watched WandaVision. Mild spoilers, I guess, for WandaVision. You would know by now. But there's literal witches, like Salem witch trial witches in the MCU now. But it took us 25 proper movies to get to that place. And frankly, that felt like a gauntlet being thrown down. I mean,
for sure. It's just that's the
because there's magic in Doctor Strange, but
and that's the kind of. But it is sort of science-y based because he's a scientist, he's a doctor, and so there just are. I don't know. The marriage of the science and magic in the MCU feels a lot more seamless in a way that they are really butting heads in this.
Well, they are one and the same. Yeah,
and in a way that it's really frustrating because I don't know that it also, like, the majority of the characters feel like they're in different movies, in my opinion.
In BVS?
Yeah. And it's really frustrating. Like, Lex Luthor is not in this movie. He's not acting in the right movie.
Boys, Bruce Wayne meets Clark Kent. I love it. I love bringing people together. How are we?
Lex.
Hello. Good. Hi. Hello. Lex, it is a pleasure. Ow. Wow. That is a good grip. You should not pick a fight with this person.
He is acting in Joel Schumacher Batman.
So what is okay? So I said this. What is the plot of this movie?
Is that your whole question? Okay. Okay. So there's a handful of things happening. There's like all of the stuff with the Senate where they're having these like hearings about whether or not they should be like, I don't know, sanctioning Superman or something. I don't really know what their goal is.
They don't know either because yes, I'm going to cut you off because it reminded me of like 2-3 more talking points. But it's like they don't even know what they're trying to accomplish. Right. Because, again...
Does the Senate ever?
Well, they're tackling it from too realistic of a place, where it's like, okay, I think that this is a fascinating thing to explore, the ramifications of superheroes.
Of a godlike superhero, for sure.
I don't think it can be done in one movie, let alone the second outing. And it's things where it's like...
Where we don't even know all the characters yet.
To quote Marvel 2 or 3 times, it was like, I made a comment in Ultron, when we were covering Ultron, where I was like, you know, we see Hulk smash through an entire apartment complex. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to know if there were people in there. All we care about is if Thor saves the 3 people in the car before it goes up. Like, you humanize a handful of savable townsfolk, village people, and that's sort of how you deal with it. And at a certain point, Marvel does start exploring some, like, it starts wading into this pool.
In Civil War. Which is, like, deep into.
But furthermore, what actually is the conflict in Civil War is that Wanda, there was a suicide bomber, and in an attempt to save the people all around him, Wanda kind of throws him up into the air, and she loses control of her magic, and he slams into a building and kills...
untold
civilians. Several dozen people. That is so graspable. I can understand the property damage, the loss of life. It's in another country. Yikes.
That's in international issues.
And so then the entire movie is about whether or not there can be legal things. And so that's just so much easier for me to sort of wrap my mind around than having effectively New York City be leveled by aliens. It's too big and it's too much for the conversations. And again, I wouldn't be treating this seriously if the movie weren't instructing me to at every step of the way.
So serious. And it's again the type
and
of
cynical,
thing,
specifically.
And it's again the type of thing where it's like it took us like 6 movies to get to them leveling New York City in the Avengers, and it's just like there was a gradual increase in the level of stakes in every movie up into that point. And so by the time that there were, like, whatever they're called, going through the sky, you know, aliens...
Which I think you said
I think it works so much better.
In our Man of Steel, where it was like, Man of Steel should have ended in Smallville.
Yeah. The battle in Smallville.
I can handle that.
The destruction of one small town Kansas thing, for sure. So we've got the Senate hearings, and then we've got Lex Luthor finding the kryptonite, and then we've got Batman, who is now branding criminals and throwing them in jail where they're certain to be murdered. And then... So
your husband housing was having the hardest part with this.
Well, I think that's fucking stupid, too, because everybody is all up in arms. Oh, my God, he's branding people. And I'm like, he's a vigilante justice kind of guy. And I don't know what it is about me that I'm just so game for vigilante justice in these things, but I'm like, he's cleaning up the streets. And the one guy specifically that we, like, watch him die, and then we meet his, like, girlfriend or whatever, and Will was like, he was a human trafficker. I don't care what happened to him. He should have died.
That shit was so wild, I didn't make that connection until Will said it. So full disclosure, in case you think I'm an idiot, good on you. You're sharp. I am.
What are you going to call me, fat, too?
No, I kind of sometimes just my eyes glaze over when I'm watching shit I don't care about. And I was also making dinner.
Oh, yeah.
But when Will said that, I was like, oh, that's why those women were in a weird jail cell.
Yeah.
I just saw, it was so weird to me. Like, it felt so out of pocket that I just sort of rejected it. I just kind of dismissed that information until that point.
It's also... in my opinion, it is not made abundantly clear all the like weaving through of the storylines in this movie. They are not made abundantly clear who is dealing with what thing and at what point they're dealing with it. So we see Batman in this like weird
den,
like dungeon with jail cells and stuff, and you're like, oh, okay.
Is this another one of those weird dreams?
Yeah, exactly. Because he has like 3 fucking dream sequences in this movie, one of which was extended. We watched the extended cut, and it is like 5 minutes long of nonsense.
It was cool.
I guess.
No, it was. It was like that tracking shot and stuff.
Okay, yeah. Regardless, it is not... certain plot points in this movie are not made clear.
I think the extended cut is more coherent than the theatrical cut, because that is something that I saw.
I don't remember it being less coherent than yesterday when I saw it in the theater. We watched the extended cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did see that apparently, because I have never seen the Watchmen, or I haven't taken note of whether I've seen the Watchmen extended cut.
Oh.
But apparently the Snyder cut of the Watchmen
is better.
We know the Snyder cut of Sucker Punch is better.
100%.
So that's where I'm finally starting to fall for this. Like, maybe the problem has been the studio.
I mean,
trying to rein him in. But go ahead. You were.
I don't know. Well, so all of that stuff is happening. The Senate and Batman doing his thing, and then Clark and Lois are both sort of similar stuff, but coming at it from different angles. Like, Lois finds a bullet.
What's the bullet?
It's like the guy, the Russian
French guy.
Well,
yeah.
He's Russian in this, but he like
the actor's French.
Yeah, I think it was a LexCorp bullet, and that guy was a like a mercenary. So LexCorp sent him there in order. Okay, that is the main thing. Lex Luthor is doing all of it.
Yeah.
So he orchestrated the thing at the beginning so that Superman would, like, do something. I don't know that he necessarily was like, he's going to burn down this village, but he was like, Superman will do whatever in order to save Lois.
Trouble, yeah.
Exactly. So he orchestrated all of that in order to, like, orchestrate all the Senate hearings and the rest of the stuff. And then everything going forward is basically, like, all of it's orchestrated by Lex, which, like, again...
Exhausted. Just tired of the train tracks.
Okay.
It's so much more efficient.
Tired of the train tracks. 100%. Don't send her to Fallujah on, like...
I think they're in Africa. I don't know where they actually are.
You're right.
We're being kind of...
She says the Sahara. That's right.
We're being kind of...
But then, tired of the train tracks. I like that. Because the biggest issue for me is...
So operatic.
The biggest issue for me with Lex Luthor is I actually really like Jesse Eisenberg's interpretation.
He's doing something. Which, God bless, somebody needed to be.
He's doing something, and he's doing a lot of it. But it's not right for this movie.
But putting him with Holly Hunter and managing that, like, through sheer grit that they make it work.
They really do. Holly Hunter also, I think Holly Hunter knows the movie she's in, but she also is...
It's too little too late.
It's way too little, way too late, and she doesn't really get anything to do. And that is honestly a huge issue for me with this movie, is it just takes so many characters out of commission in movie 2. Holly Hunter... The woman that you
Mercy
like,
Graves.
Scoot McNairy, who could have been like cool later, and fucking Superman.
That was the misogynistic thing that I didn't like, is that he can't even piss standing up. He has to sit down like a lady folk. German men sit down to pee because it's more hygienic. So that kind of toxic masculinity bullshit.
He also he's putting a picture of his family at the like memorial, the one that looks like the Vietnam memorial that they've got for like all the people who died in Metropolis, and then we find out later that his wife left him. She's not dead. She left him, I think, because he's only half a man now, is what he says, which is so gross and stupid. So gross and stupid.
And as I said, I was like, his condition is not that bad. Well, we're not gonna.
No, I mean it's objectively terrible to lose your legs.
But I was like, he has to the knee. I was like, there is still such a, like, I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
No, I'm not a doctor. I know that that's not the question. Within the confines of
I
this
know
movie,
that it changes the injury because I watched the season of Dancing with the Stars that I forget his name. He was a soldier. I remember. I forget his name. He was cute. He wore a t-shirt that said Stud Muffin.
That's
but they were talking about how it was harder for him to dance because on one of his legs it was above the knee, so he didn't have
bend. A bend. Yeah.
And so that's where this is coming from for me, is I know that the knee thing, I'm like,
but okay, the thing for me is within the confines of the world of this movie, this is not losing both your legs is not worse than death. And so he really is treating it like it ended his life in a way that it's maybe you just married a shitty woman. She's the one who left you when you got put in a wheelchair. I don't know. Scoot McNairy's character is one of the more frustrating ones because then he's just totally a pawn. He doesn't know there's a bomb in his wheelchair.
I hate that scene.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're meant to. He's a villain, but it's a very, like, the Mercy Graves thing is a very me take.
Yeah.
I thought that actress was very
captivating.
Yeah, and I thought we were building a franchise. I thought we wanted characters that could develop and grow
100%.
instead of just shoehorning more of them into the next movie.
Yeah.
And I just hate the way that, like, she's waiting for Lex and he's like, no, go on in. And then she's kind of like, I was like, it's one of my favorite references, but it's like Marjorie and the Sept.
Yeah.
They're kind of like,
yeah,
like, Henry Cavill baffles me a little bit in these movies because you were wondering where I was going to go.
No, I agree with you.
I don't think he's good and I don't think he's bad. There are times where it's like when the bomb goes off and we show him
like,
I really love that.
Oh, you do? I think it's sort of, he just is like this again.
No, I think it's a bit more, it's just sort of, because every time he tries to do
the right thing.
The thing that the people, the peons want, it backfires too. And there's just something about it where it's just so like,
again.
I don't know. I think it's so funny, especially like, because had he done the like anguished, like just killed General Zod scream again.
Sure.
We don't need that.
No.
Which was great when he did it, but.
Yeah, I think he's better as Clark than he is as Superman.
Yeah. Well, because Superman's an idiot that just has to explain what he's doing.
Honestly, Superman kind of blows as a character.
What was that scene where he comes to Lois to explain to her?
Oh, well, first of all, he is just in plain view in the Superman outfit on her street-facing balcony. That's
I meant when he goes down to her on in the cab, and he's like, I tried to be a good guy and they won't let me, or something. And
yeah.
No one stays good in this world.
Because Will was like, why did you come to tell her that?
Yeah.
Just go do it.
No,
like,
ridiculous. Ridiculous. We did also get, in the extended cut, Jenna Malone she's not cut, but it's such a Jenna Malone character who, again.
For 2 scenes, though.
Who, again, does not fit in this movie. She is not in the right movie.
I had it in my head somewhere, and maybe this was wild fan speculation, that. Again, I don't seek it out. It gets thrust upon me. But I thought she was going to be Barbara Gordon.
Oh.
And the implications of that is staggering.
Yeah.
So, because that would have put her in Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. I'm not sure. So, God, we're like not even at the halfway point of things that happened in this movie.
I mean, we've covered a lot of
We have covered a lot because but also the whole Martha stuff.
Why did you say that name?
I kind of get both sides of this issue.
The Martha thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not because their mothers have the same name. It's meant to be humanizing. It's meant to be like, this like alien terrorist
also has a mom?
Well, with his dying breath would rather save his human mother. Like, I get what they're going for. And it's not that I think it doesn't work.
It doesn't.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It could work. I think it could work, but Batman and Superman are both being so extraordinarily dumb in that moment where like Superman is like, please save Martha is essentially what he's doing. And instead of being like, who's Martha? He just is like, how do you know that name? And it's like, it's a name. Everybody knows the name Martha.
In which Amy Adams literally has to run in and go, it's his mother. Like, it's so weird the way she like lunges into
his mother's name.
She lunges into frame. Like, but no. My issue with the movie as a whole is there's no conflict in this movie. I never buy into Batman versus Superman. No. And I know it's Lex Luthor.
Well, there's no real conflict. It's all
it's going through its machinations.
Yeah,
it's going through the motions
100%
until we can. And so in which case they have to invent not invent.
No, but they do because Bruce and Alfred are having this conversation, and Bruce goes like 0 to 100 in like 1.2 seconds, where he's like,
He has the power to wipe out the entire human race, and if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
if there's even a 1% chance that he is here as a malevolent spirit, then we have to assume that he 100% is. And it's just like his eyes get bigger and his voice gets deeper for the whole thing, and he just
his mother.
it's like insanity what's happening. He gets the crazy eyes, and you just are like, Bruce, you have maybe just talk to him.
Well,
Maybe just discuss what's happening.
So the point I was getting at was that they have to then. So we spend this entire movie building up to this Batman versus Superman fight.
Yeah.
That I don't care about.
No.
Some people do, but it's like that is so not the satisfying conclusion to the story that they have to invent another bad guy in the form of Doom's apocalypse.
Reanimate
Darkseid?
No.
Doomsday.
Doomsday, I think you're right. It's just like giant, gross, reanimated Michael Shannon with Lex Luthor's blood also.
Sure. They needed Neil deGrasse Tyson standing next to that woman was too close to the lightning in that one. I was like, lady.
Well, also, Will mentioned, because I think we've said this before in some of our coverage, but like, I'm not an actual comic book person. I watch the movies and I just accept what I'm presented with. But apparently he is like a huge villain in like a really long standing villain in the comic books, which is what Will told me. And I just was like...
And he does kill Superman. Yeah,
but I'm just like, what a weird fucking thing to do in movie 2. They could have really built that up.
On top of all of that, they also showed it in the trailers, in the commercials. They didn't say Doomsday's name, but they showed him in the commercials. And it was like...
What the hell?
And so it then becomes a second movie. And that's why we get Wonder Woman. Now, granted...
So good.
It just got so hard. It's an electric cello.
Yeah, it's excellent.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was possible. And what is her name? Tina Gao. Yeah, Tina. Well, Guo. Is that Gao? Go.
Sure. Something like
Tina Go. She's hot as balls. Yeah, there's a video of her playing.
She's hot as balls and she plays the electric cello.
I will always remember being in the theater when it starts, when she shows up, and I just kind of remember grabbing your arm and being like, it's the Wonder Woman song.
And it's also just so cool.
Because it's not the Wonder Woman, but it's close enough that I was like, I could just tell. I was like, this is... And because apparently they like had conversations about it. And what they ultimately settled on was they were like, they wanted it to sound like a war, like a battle cry.
Ooh, it does.
They wanted it to sound like banshees going to war.
Yeah, and then that is like the only moment of levity for the rest of the movie.
Well, her chemistry with both of them is so good.
Yeah.
If anything were not working, the addition of her put everything into place.
Right. Once they're not fighting anymore, even the Batman and Superman chemistry is good. Even they are like, because they have that little exchange where the one of them is like,
She with you? I thought she was with you.
That's clever. It's a little bit clunky, but they both.
But they also defer to her.
They do. They really do.
And there's something that I don't know who to credit, whether it's Zack Snyder or Gal Gadot or Patty Jenkins or whatever. But they're somehow they managed to capture the essence, the spirit of this like primal ancient warrior, but also like eternal divine feminine. Because the scene when like Superman has been killed and Lois like runs up and she turns and looks at Lois and there's just such like, you know, that she knows, even if she like doesn't have like, oh yes, you've been his girlfriend of X amount of time.
Sure.
But she's just like, I've seen the widow.
Of course.
Before.
I've been the widow.
I know what this is. And it's just kind of like like a reassuring, I'm so sorry, just but only through the glance. And I do remember reading this, so I think it's true. But the smirk that she does when Darkseid like knocks her on her ass, she improvised that because Zack Snyder was like, "Why are you smiling?"
Because it's better.
And he was like, "You're a warrior. You should be mad." And she was like, "Well, my take is that she's excited for the first time to act in a long time.
To have an actual opponent.
To actually have a challenge." And it just like, I don't know, they nailed it so hard with so little.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the direction is better. I think it's less bombastic. Although it's still pretty bombastic.
In the battle, you mean? Yeah.
Than in Man of Steel.
Yeah.
I find that almost unwatchable.
Well, this is strangely more contained. It's like a bigger monster, but they are really like in this one spot.
An abandoned harbor in the middle of town.
Well, but they're not zooming everywhere, crushing buildings and shit.
That alone sort of makes the movie worth it, but it is what we said about Man of Steel, where it's like, these movies are damned by their competence.
Yeah. It also only almost makes it worth it. This movie is 3 hours and 2 minutes long, the extended cut, but it's easily almost 2 hours without the extension. And like you said, Wonder Woman is in it for 9.5 minutes, and the rest of it is kind of just a lot of zigzagging through plot, all the while knowing that Lex has to be the one who's pulling all the strings. So it's like you're doing all of this lamp shading and stuff to the point where, like you said, we get so confused that we're like, oh, that guy was a human trafficker. Yeah.
Well, and I just don't think, like, I understand what it's attempting to do, but I don't think it does any of them successfully enough to justify its existence.
Yeah. There's also, I think it's similar to how I felt about Man of Steel, where it's too long and too much happens and still nothing gets accomplished. There's still absolutely nothing that's happening. So it's just really, it's like, what did I spend 3 hours doing? I haven't moved forward in any way.
When you're binge watching a show and it's like 40 minutes of nothing for 2 minutes right before the end, that's like a cliffhanger, and you're like, well, now I gotta watch the next thing, and it's 40 minutes of nothing in order
okay, so I just recently was watching the originals with Monique and Tiffany from Black Girls Do Stuff Too, and I felt that, because I was like, I remember loving this when it was on. I remember being so in it, because I watched it all live, and I was like, I think it's because I'm watching it in a row, so every episode begins and everybody's weirdly mad at different people than they were at the end of the previous episode. And by the time you get to the end of it, it's like 90% resolved. And then it kicks something else into gear so that different people will be mad at different people in the next episode. And I was like, if the plotting of this show weren't so tight, I would have quit because the writing is so bad. And that is sort of how I feel about this, where it's like, it's so... in my opinion, it's so poorly done for so much of it that it makes the good parts stand out that much more, but they still are such a minuscule part of the overall, like, the end result. And so it's so frustrating watching them have all these pieces that are actually great. Because like I said, I think Henry Cavill is great as Clark. Let him be Clark a little more often. I think Ben Affleck is great as Bruce and Batman. And I think Gal Gadot is like an exceptional Wonder Woman. Let these people hang out with each other. And like, that is one thing that I did like about the theatrical cut of Justice League, is that they hang out with each other for a minute. Not like fun at all, of course, but they're in the room. They don't go get shawarma. Yeah, no, they don't go get shawarma, but they are just like, they're in a room talking to each other about like issues with what's going on and like interpersonal issues. And so it's like, that's the kind of stuff that, if you're not building your characters and you're not building the relationships between your characters, then all I'm coming to watch is spectacle, and that is fun only to a point. And then you're loading it down with all of this, like, you know, really serious, dark imagery and like really, really realistic, real world nonsense. And it makes for a really not fun movie for me. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't mean for it to be so abrupt, but I was kind of like, I'm done.
Oh, no, I mean, that's fine. I guess we can.
Come to the end.
In the midst of some of this, is Bruce is finding the other metahumans to try to start the justice. So we like see some footage of Cyborg and the Flash and Aquaman and Wonder Woman, even though we see her in action in the movie as well. But so that is all sort of happening. And at the end, there is a military funeral for Superman and then a Kansas funeral for Clark. And he was going to propose to Lois. It's fine.
He gets into a bathtub with his clothes on.
That's at the beginning, and it is very
Then he takes
nice.
them off. I do enjoy the beefcakery that they don't shy away from.
No, they don't.
So, I mean, even though every so often Zack Snyder will kind of piss me off, it's I mean, equal opportunity. There is a...
Yeah.
Well, like I said, there's nothing really homoerotic, but there's...
No, but there's a Batman butt, and there's a Superman's hairy chest. Yeah. I'm not saying there's nothing good about this movie. I'm just saying there should be more that's good about this movie, and there really isn't more than what we listed. So, and then at the very end, it's super Inception. The dirt on the top of the grave starts shaking because he's obviously coming back to life. So next is Suicide Squad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll be back, I think, next episode maybe, with Suicide Squad, which I have not revisited since the theater.
Should make a Enchantress doll and have a sky beam.
Oh God. All right. Well, all of these movies are on HBO Max. I don't think we mentioned that in Man of Steel, because HBO Max is what's releasing the Snyder Cut of Justice League. So that's where we're watching everything. If you have HBO Max, you should follow along with us. It'll be fun. Other than that, you can follow us on Twitter at So I'm Watching, Instagram at So I'm Watching This Show. We also have a website, soimwatching.com, which links out to everything, including our Patreon. If you'd like to throw a little money in there like a tip jar, it is patreon.com/soimwatchingthisshow. And then other than that, just rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you listen. And that's it for us. Bye. Play us out with the electric cello. The fuck is that?
Beginning of the song.
Oh.